everybody. Welcome to World Travel Market Africa this morning. With me, I have Tarryn Tomlinson from Able2Travel. She's an accessibility consultant, TV presenter, and all-round badass. She's climbed Kilimanjaro, and she's here to tell us about her magnificent story, and I'm really looking forward to chatting to her after she's done. Tarryn, the floor is yours. Tell us about your adventure.
My name is Tarryn Tomlinson. I'm an accessibility consultant for luxury spaces. Oh, and I happen to be in a wheelchair.
But I'm able to travel.
Don't look at me and think, shame, she's got it rough. Of course, there are logistics to all of this. And finding help sometimes presents delightful surprises.
I just want to live my best life.
Without being restricted or restrained by a wheelchair. And to inspire others to live their best lives.
Best day ever.
Looking on the bright side,
I've always got somewhere to sit.
I've got a bucket list full of adventure, the great outdoors, a spot of culture, and changing people's perception around diverse abilities.
Oh my gosh.
I need to be clear. This is not about being disabled. This show is about living fully and creating a world that is inclusive.
I mean, we've been to the moon already. Why are some places still inaccessible?
Didn't spell a trap.
So, I'm going exploring. I want to adventure madly, seek out luxury spaces, eat delicious food and drink fine wine, making new friends along the way. Are you coming with me?
Bon voyage. We had so much fun shooting the promo for the Able2Travel TV series. Anyone wanting to partner can DM me for more information. I'll leave my contact details at the end of the presentation. It's my intention that today's talk will leave you with a basic knowledge of the accessible tourism market, tools and resources to make your tourism destinations, facilities, and services accessible for all people. I will also introduce you to some real-life travelers with disabilities who are yearning for more accessible travel. I've planned a 40-minute talk, and there will be time for Q&A at the end. So without further delay, let's get started. I think before we get into statistics and numbers, it's important for me to clear up some concepts and definitions regarding disability or disabled people. Firstly, according to the social model, disability is the outcome of the interaction of a person's functional status and his environment. People are not identified as having a disability based on a medical condition. Rather, we are disabled by an environment that erects barriers to our participation in social and economic life. So disability is not an all or nothing concept. Disability can range from mild to severe, it can be constant or episodic, it could be seen or unseen. Universal design is the design of products and environments to be usable by all people to the greatest extent possible without the need for a special design. A ramp, for example, is universal design. It just makes life easier for everyone. Then accessible tourism is the ongoing endeavor to ensure that tourist destinations, products, and services are accessible to all people regardless of their disability or age. And it encompasses publicly and privately owned and operated tourist locations. Now we get on to some of those stats that I was talking about. According to the World Health Organization, over 1 billion people, which is roughly about 15% of the world's population, living with some kind of disability, whether it's visible or invisible. And this rate is increasing due to an aging population and a global increase in chronic health conditions. In some countries, the social and economic situation of this group favors their participation in tourism if destinations are well prepared to receive people with disabilities or other special needs. Now, I acknowledge that a large portion of persons with disabilities live in abject poverty. However, for the other percentage of those with disabilities living in countries with more access to socioeconomic opportunities, those with disabilities who do travel offer a viable market. Persons with disabilities have a global disposable income of $200 billion per annum. And just taking Americans with disabilities who travel as an example, during the period of 2018 to 2019, 27 million travelers spent 58.7 billion on travel. And that's up from a previous study. Spending on air travel has also increased by 3 billion from 2015. If you're interested in more information, you can find the stats by the Open Door organization. They've got a multiple stats also on air travel, cruise, and travel accommodation. But these are not just a collection of numbers. These stats point to real people who have stories. Let me introduce you to a few of them. On the left at the top, we have Willem Kuft from the Netherlands, and he became disabled and wheelchair user after a car accident. Now, for the first time this year, Willem has come last year, and we could still travel. The beginning of last year was the first time that he came to South Africa and to Cape Town, and that was to kite surf. And he's an avid kite surfer, and he's traveled here with a number of his friends, and they intend to come back every year. And then we have Sylvia Longmire, who's a media personality. She's an accessibility writer and avid traveler. She's also got a large following and spends her life going to destinations around the world. We then have Corey Lee, who is my favorite. He is a world traveler and a blogger. He's been to 7 continents and 37 countries. And this picture of him here is being attacked by a hippopotamus on his holiday in South Africa, doing a South African safari. Corey Lee has got a very big following on Instagram as well as via his blog, and he spends his time traveling the world with his mother and friends. And then at the bottom, we have our mompreneur, Dominique Daines, who is the expat, and her husband had been traveling for work, and she had broken her knee but needed to get back home and needed to travel with her 2 small kids. And Dominique represents a part of the market that, though doesn't have a permanent disability, have a temporary disability. And I'm sure many of you out there have experienced some form, time or the other, needed to use some type of a device, whether it was because you hurt your ankle or your wrist or were in an accident. But many people around the world are in need of accessible services like Dominique. And then there's Zizipo. Zizipo is a lecturer and sports and events tourism specialist. Zizipo is also the first Black man with a disability to summit Mount Kilimanjaro. He lives in Cape Town and lives a very active life and travels all over the world. And then there's Wendy Reed, who's a business owner and IT specialist. And Wendy lost her leg in a car accident and has since needed to adjust her lifestyle. Wendy too works mostly remotely, and so she has the ability to travel all around the world. She's just been staying in London for 6 months during the COVID time, and she could easily work from London. And Wendy and Zizipo are 2 people that, well, Wendy and Zizipo and I were 3 out of the 5 people with disabilities who last year climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, to bring awareness to the fact that ultimately it's our attitudes that determine our altitude, and that people with disabilities do and will continue to travel and deserve equal access to destinations, products, and services. Now, the interesting thing about this picture is that only 5 of us in this picture had disabilities. The rest were the support team and guides, which brings me to my next point. Persons with disabilities on average spend 2 to 4 times more on holiday expenses than able-bodied travelers. To give you an example, generally to go up Kilimanjaro as an able-bodied person, you can have 1 or maximum 2 guides with you on your trip. We each had 4. We also had to rent portable toilets, as a hole in the ground simply wouldn't suffice. Although it did on the day when I caught a stomach bug and my porter with the loo were nowhere to be seen. Not one of my trip highlights. The rest of it, however, was amazing. Kilimanjaro aside, persons with disabilities also stay in higher priced accommodation because of our requirements for space and hygiene and access. We also spend more on vehicle hire, hiring bigger vehicles and using door-to-door transportation services. As public transportation generally is a bad idea in most countries. We also pay more for extra space on an aircraft if required, simply to be more comfortable. The long and short of the story is that we pay. And as people who pay, and particularly more than the average traveler, more attention needs to be paid to getting the basics right. Then, passing from one lucrative market to another who is in need of universal design, baby boomers, another group of people who make a significant contribution to the luxury and accessible tourism market. Baby boomers are those who were born between the years 1946 and 1964. Baby boomers are living longer than any generation before them, thanks to medical advancements. But although they are living longer, over 50% of baby boomers over the age of 65 years old already have a mobility impairment. As they have aged, baby boomers have they literally shaped the focus of many companies. We can think of anti-aging products, for example. Baby boomers make up 80% of the luxury tourism market. And according to Visa's vice president, they're also holding onto their jobs longer and still outspending millennials. The accessible tourism market offers you a golden opportunity. First, it offers you an opportunity to build back better tourism by thinking of a long-term game plan that will ensure that the tourism industry and businesses within the industry are sustainable. We will only survive if we think and act responsibly towards the environment and each other. It also offers you the opportunity to tap into a market which is growing at an average of 22% per annum. Aging people and people with disabilities aren't going anywhere. So there's no better time to start thinking strategically as to the future. As more options become available to people with disabilities, they simply will spend their money elsewhere where they feel welcomed. Persons with disabilities and aging people are more free to travel around the world all year round, as most work remotely or on pension, providing a great opportunity for business to offer low season offers to this market. A personal story would best highlight the last point. Some years ago, I was living back home with my family, and when I would have friends coming over to Cape Town for business or pleasure, I would book into the hotel with them to get a break. One day I chose to stay at the Radisson Blue Hotel. When we ordered room service, the waiter greeted us, and I should note that my friends are able-bodied, about 5 of them, and he greeted us with a beautiful smile, but it was only after he pointed to his badge which said, "I'm deaf," that we realized he had a hearing impairment. So we quickly shifted our bodies so that he could read our lips. And he took our order and he left. The feeling we had when he left was one of utter amazement. First, we were blown away by him, but also by the initiative between the Radisson Group and the organization called Deaf SA. Since then, each time my group of able-bodied friends come to Cape Town, we book into the same hotel because we want to spend our money with companies who care. We also want to spend our money with companies who pride themselves on services and standards of excellence. The Radisson, due to their collaboration, has won many awards, and their corporate image was also greatly enhanced via the media. So before we get into how your business can become more accessible, it's important to understand some of the current barriers to access. Now, barriers to accessible tourism. What is a barrier? A barrier to inclusion is anything that prevents or hinders accessibility or the full participation of persons with disabilities. Physical barriers could mean steps to the entrance, pathway that's uneven, long distances from one section of the premises to the other. Examples of social barriers are prejudices, pity, isolating people with disabilities, or overprotecting them. Now that we have a greater sense of what those barriers are, let's check how we can become more accessible. So looking at creating inclusive policies in post-COVID-19 tourism, we need to treat accessibility as a competitive advantage. Companies will reap the benefit of putting accessibility in place. I think once you realize its competitive advantages. Designing inclusive experiences produces personalized services and accommodates the widest range of potential visitors. Us overcoming the effects of COVID-19 requires embracing a greater diversity of clients to ensure economic sustainability. And as with everything, first it starts with education. Now is the time to finally adopt an inclusive approach to tourism by developing sustainable and accessible solutions and build back better tourism. Gather data on accessible tourism. Decision-making on future developments in the sphere of accessible tourism should be based on data that reveals the profile, behavior, and expenditure patterns of travelers, their needs, but also their families and the essential staff. And then second pillar is the pillar of transformation. Once you have an understanding of how you're able to change, you then need to adjust your accessibility policies or strategies, or create some if you don't have any. Also include someone with a disability in your planning process. A large part of the problem is that able-bodied people design without the active participation of persons with disabilities. By applying the international standards, we can ensure that the same level of accessibility for tourism products and services worldwide. The standard also helps to resolve doubts for service providers and clients by supporting common understandings of accessibility while ensuring service quality. Then improve customer service. Tourism service personnel usually lack training on catering for customers with disabilities, and therefore they also lack confidence. Staff can be expected that travelers with disabilities have various aspirations, and with careful planning, many activities that might not be considered accessible, like climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, can be adapted for the needs of, well, for access needs. It's been my experience that trained staff can alleviate 80% of the barriers faced by persons with disabilities. Then use innovation, and technologies as a lever in marketing travel, making it easier for all. Alternative formats like sign language, audio description, braille should be incorporated in information, providing, showing people what services are provided. You don't have to have all of them, but at least some would greatly enhance the way you receive people with disabilities. Work on a short, long, and medium strategy. Start with a small ramp, an accessible parking bay. Offer more information on your website. Install a plugin on your website. Make it doable, and you'll be amazed at how much difference that change can make. And then market it. And that's the last pillar, information. Administration should keep their role in mainstreaming accessibility in marketing. Customers with disability shouldn't be targeted by mainstream, or should be targeted by mainstream media channels. It shouldn't be considered a niche market. Here's a tip: simply include people with disabilities in your marketing and advertising. And do it in ways that make people with disability part of a society. Why can't we see an image of a blind man in a business suit with a cane drinking a whiskey at a bar? Or in a group setting, more inclusion of persons with disabilities enjoying life. We also socialize. Contrary to popular belief, we don't just go on trips to the hospital, work in church. Also, terms such as accessible is very vague and is misleading. What I consider accessible may be different to someone who is blind. So information regarding room specifications and services for persons with disability should be clearly stated and in a manner that makes it easy for someone to access. For instance, it's good practice to provide images on your website regarding accessible rooms in hotels or other types of lodging. So factors such as bed heights. This is always such a pain for me. But bed heights are often overlooked by designers and hoteliers, people who are actually designing these products. And do you know how many establishments have high beds in the universally accessible rooms, which make them impossible for a person with a disability to access on their own? And in most cases, even with the help of someone else. Potential clients should have access to accurate and timely information, which needs to be objective and reliable so travelers can make decisions with confidence. One way to ensure that your services are always improving, as you know, is to encourage feedback from end users. Visitors' feedback and reviews must be used for further improvements. And then destinations and companies should see travelers with disabilities, seniors, and families with young children as important source markets for their business to thrive. Again, and they need to play an active role in co-designing accessible experiences. Tourism for all brings many benefits to visitors and local communities and a deeper quality of life for all. We are all interdependent, and if you are to build a stronger economy, then it has to be inclusive. And in the words of the famous Zig Ziglar, you can get everything in life you want if you will just help enough other people get what they want.
Thank you, Tarryn. That was absolutely wonderful. I must say I was a bit horrified when you were talking about the toilet situation on Kilimanjaro, but as an able-bodied human being, even that was touch and go when I climbed Kilimanjaro in 2010. So my absolute admiration for that incredible experience. Which route did you climb, by the way?
We took the Moringa route. Yeah, I tell you, it was horrific that day when you're eating your sandwiches, and of course you're in a new location, and your stomach just decides that no, it's gonna start acting up, and yeah, you've got a hole in the ground.
Oh my goodness. So yeah, let's not actually go into that because it's a pretty terrible experience. But how amazing having conquered Kilimanjaro, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about some of the things that surprised you. You were expecting something and actually you experienced something completely different.
Yeah, one of the things that I found surprisingly, well, not surprisingly, but one of the things I must say that I absolutely love Tanzania, but I love the people in particular. I just found them exceptionally kind and helping. And, the guides that we had along, it felt like having a family. So as I said, each person is an able-bodied person, you'd go up with particularly one or two guides, to help you and carry your stuff. As we're persons with disabilities, we have to have 4 guides each. And, that all comes at a cost as well.
Oh, yeah. So were they teaching you pole pole, and did you get all the pole pole?
Absolutely. And they were like, hello, dada, which means sister in Swahili.
They're amazing.
It was absolutely amazing. Also, just the different, I'm not sure which route did you take?
Also, they call it the Coca-Cola route, but when I was climbing it, it didn't feel like there was anything Coca-Cola about it, to be honest.
There was not a Coca-Cola in sight.
No, but the surprising thing for me is people think that Kilimanjaro, you get to the mountain and you scale it. But actually, you've got to go through a national park for 4 days before you actually get to scale the mountain. And then it's only at like midnight, the night before you summit, that you even start climbing up it, essentially. Yeah. And there are all these beautiful zones, vegetation zones, as you move higher and higher up from an
absolutely, starting with the rainforest.
Exactly.
Right? And I mean, I don't know if you saw it, but we saw all the monkeys and you're going through the rainforest. So that's already, so we had assumed on this Coca-Cola route that we were 5 persons with disabilities, that, we were going to have a semi-easy road. Not so. Once we got there, the organizers had got into a certain point when they came to do a recce of Kilimanjaro. They didn't continue further. They just thought, the road was great from there. So when we got to that point, I feel so sorry for the guides, but they had to carry us. It was hectic, but then moving from there, as you said, one of my other favorite places as well was the zones, was the Alpine Desert. And just before reaching base camp, we actually went through a 2-hour blizzard.
Wow.
A 2-hour blizzard that I tell you, I had never been so frozen in my life. And obviously as someone sitting, so, a lot of people make jokes with me and then they'll say, oh, do you mean you went to climb Kilimanjaro? You meant you were climbed up Kilimanjaro? You were carried up Kilimanjaro?
Not so.
Not so. And I'm like, it is difficult. I mean, we have so much to contend to, the weather. And when you are not active, you are feeling that cold even more because you are not walking. But it was a life-changing experience. I don't think I'll ever do it again, but it was amazing.
One of those once in a lifetime, and also just an incredible view on people's endurance. I climbed with a bunch of 12, there were 12 people in my group, and actually the 2 fittest of the group, I thought, they're going to have absolutely no problem summiting. And they actually got hypothermia. And one got hypothermia and the other one got altitude sickness. So neither of them were able to summit. But there was another woman who was climbing with me who is a mom of 2, who was in her, I would say, late 40s at the time, and also got altitude sickness and should never have climbed, but she climbed it and she made it to the top for her kids. We were all raising money for a children's home in Johannesburg for charity, and she was determined to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. So this immense resilience is just absolutely impressive. And well done to you guys for
Thank you. But that's the thing. You never know who's going to make it to the top. Likewise, in the hotel that we were staying, we were some Canadians that were setting off on the next day to do the same trek with us. And when we had come back, the one actually said, no, you couldn't make it past day 1. A fit, healthy man couldn't make it past day 1 due to altitude sickness. And so, I always say, I feel incredibly lucky. People don't understand how taxing it is on the body. It's not just about the climb, but the physical walking. It's about the altitude. It's about the cold. It's all of that. But the feeling, however, of being at base camp. So when we got to base camp, I decided that from there I wasn't going to continue my journey. Because the weather, was really bad. As I said, we had gone through a 2-hour blizzard. And so even the people that did decide to go up, they had to turn back and come down. No one could actually go up and summit that day. But because my heart rate was just far too high. My heart was going at an incredible speed, and I was out of breath. And I thought, if this is what it's like here, why am I risking it to go even further? And one of our cameramen that had went along, healthy young guy, had collapsed in the snow because he just couldn't. We had to rush him down immediately. So there was no way that I was going to take that risk. But there I was in the snow, feeling as happy as as anything, with my guides, and we just started singing Mambo, Mambo Buana. So that Wageni.
Yes. Oh my goodness. But we're painting a terrible and terrifying story of Mount Kilimanjaro. But in fact, it is just, as you say, it's the people who are climbing with you that become your friends and your brothers. And that experience of walking through a national park, going from forest to what looks a little bit like Cape Fynbos, to this alpine desert where you could literally be on the moon, and just seeing it looming ahead with its beautiful snow cap on it, and thinking that snow cap, I can still see it. And in years to come, sadly, others who climb Mount Kilimanjaro may not. That incredible experience.
Exactly. Absolutely. It was that whole feeling. And I'm not sure if it was in the moorlands where you had that freakish type of trees that look like people.
Yes.
Okay, though in dusk, they are very scary.
And of course, you're at altitude, so your mind's already not working properly. You've got a headache, you're dehydrated, you're seeing things, and then you see this looming. No, very weird.
But it's, yeah, but as you just mentioned now, I mean, that was the feeling that I had. It was of immense gratitude of being in the top, and the feeling was that I am seen what very few people with their natural eyes will ever get to witness in their lives. And that, you know, it was just like with incredible gratitude. I think we stayed at base camp for 2 days. I stayed there.
Wow. So you got to see all of the traffic going in and out. And my favorite is the meals, the most amazing things that these guys can conjure up. And literally one pot with kind of half a gas burner, and incredible ingenuity and innovation. Absolutely astounding.
And tasty as well. I mean, forget your 2-minute noodles. I mean, so it was tasty. Like soups and all different types of things that they really spoiled us. And as I said, you know, I have to take my hat off to Pamoja, and that was our tour guides in Tanzania, who just took, and was the first group of people with disabilities that they'd ever taken up Kilimanjaro. So, you know, it was a learning experience, but I must say that they got the vans that was needed, you know, everything was taken care of. We had the adequate guides, and, you know, they got us to the top safely and back. So I will be going back again, but this time I think I'm going to go and lay on a beach in Zanzibar.
I think that's a great idea. I'm coming with you. I am able to travel to Zanzibar. Yeah! Thank you, Tarryn, for your time today. It's been such a joy to have you on and for sharing your insights with us. Building Back Better, 100% agree with you. This is our opportunity to do so. So let's make a difference together, stronger together. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.